Today is the 16th of October 2024 ថ្ងៃនេះជាថ្ងៃ16ខែតុលាឆ្នាំ2024 and I'll be reading My War with the CIA by the memoirs of Prince Norodom Sihanouk as related to Wilfred Burchett. So Prince Norodom Sihanouk's My War with the CIA is an eloquent account of his struggle for Cambodian independence, first against the French and then for over 2 decades against the United States. His is a remarkable memoir. As a child, he learned of the indignities and the humiliations suffered by his predecessors at the hands of the French colonialists. Picked by the French in 1941 at the age of 18 to ascend to the throne, because they thought that he was a little lamb, he fought a successful royal crusade for independence that was internationally recognized by the Geneva Peace Conference in 1954. Yet formal independence from the French was only the beginning of a more arduous struggle for Cambodia's very survival. Though Sihanouk abdicated the throne in 1955, he did so in order to participate even more actively in his country's political life. For the next 15 years, his policies preserved Cambodia as an oasis of peace in war-ravaged Indochina. These policies were often bitterly opposed by Washington, and his memoirs offer startling insights as to the reasons why, vividly portraying American diplomatic and covert activities designed to undermine his neutralist policies. Prince Sihanouk describes the assassination attempts on his life, the way in which United States aid weakened his power and corrupted his officials, and the ever-present CIA involvement with his domestic opponents. While not every detail of the historical record is available in this book, in Prince Sihanouk's words, proves unceasing and determined intervention of the United States in the internal affairs of my country, and particularly the role of the Central Intelligence Agency, also known as CIA, and it is a classic account of the tactics utilized by the world's strongest power to force a small nation away from its chosen policy. The coup which toppled his government in March 1970 was the tragic culmination of these policies. This provocative journal by one of the world's most widely traveled leaders offers striking insights into a galaxy of such international figures as the duo's brothers, Chairman Mao and Zhou Enlai, Ho Chi Minh, and General Giap, graphically comparing war-torn Cambodia to the earlier years of peace. The memoirs culminate in a passionate defense of Prince Sihanouk's government in Beijing, his faith in the growing resistance movement in Cambodia, and his belief that Cambodia will survive its terrible ordeal. This book was in 1970, way before the Pol Pot regime, so I will not count on his faith in the growing resistance movement. He has misplaced his faith, unfortunately, but that will be covered in his second book, on War and Hope, the case of Cambodia. I'm still in the process of archiving the second book. As of now, as of today, stated in the date of October 16, archive.org is still down, so I'm not able to save that book yet. So in this picture is Prince Sihanouk succeeded to the throne of Cambodia in 1941 and has been the dominant personality in his country's history ever since. The book was dictated in French to the Australian journalist Wilfred Burchett at the left, and then approved by Prince Sihanouk. It's from Boston Public Library, that's where it came from apparently. It's digitized by the Internet Archive, My War of the CIA. Yeah. The contents, the illustrations. Is the picture of Indochina. So here we have the left side of Cambodia. It should be in 2 pages actually. Forward. For 16 years, Cambodia lived under the shadow of that which happened on the 30th of April 1970, when United States tanks rolled across her frontiers and United States bombers started the systematic process of reducing Cambodian towns and villages to rubble and ashes. In the pages that follow, the Cambodian head of state, Prince Norodom Sihanouk, chronicles the background from his first fateful meetings in the mid-1950s with the brothers Duels heading the U.S. State Department and the CIA respectively until the coup of March 18, 1970. The account is classic for its description of the tonal nature of the means employed by the world's mightiest military economic power to force a small country away from its chosen policy and to get rid of the architect and chief executant of that policy. At Sihanouk's first meetings with the brothers Duels, there was ominous insistence that he should abandon his neutralist ideas. When diplomatic, political, and economic pressures accompanied by military threats failed, there was a period of plots and assassination attempts. When they in turn failed, it was finally, with well-financed treason at the top, a military coup and armed intervention by the United States and its Saigon satellite to maintain the usurpers in power that the deed was done. The USA, by the Lonel coup of March 1970, had succeeded in exporting to Indochina the well-tried methods of Latin America. For those of us who have followed this cruelly unequal struggle from the time of the signing of the 1954 Geneva ceasefire agreements on Indochina, there seemed to be an inevitability of sequence and denouncement in the unfolding drama. The scenario was only too familiar. Friends of Cambodia, supporters of Norodom Sihanouk's neutrality for peace policies, often held their breath in anguished concern when it seemed he must back down or fall, either to an assassin's bullet or by well-paid treachery. Those who knew him best, however, were convinced he would never back down. A point which zealots for U.S. policies in Southeast Asia should ponder is the standard pattern which renders military dictatorships essential to implement those policies. This proves true for South Vietnam, for Cambodia, and for Thailand. No shade of political deviation, nothing less than total deviation to the U.S. line, can be tolerated. Only when their implementation is thwarted by force of arms does the United States yield any ground. The 1970 coup in Cambodia, for instance, had its counterpart in the 17 November 71 coup in neighboring Thailand. The mere rumor that Thailand was flirting with China and North Vietnam, and that Foreign Minister Tanat Koman was mediating over the advantages of neutralism, was sufficient for a military coup to install Field Marshal Thonam Kittikachorn as military dictator. His first acts were to dissolve the government, both houses of parliament and constitution, just as Lonel had done soon after seizing power in Cambodia. In Thailand as in Cambodia, U.S. air power was soon engaged in propping up the new dictator. Norodom Sihanouk has analyzed in depth and documented in detail the sordid saga of Washington's other ground war against his country until it erupted above ground on 30th April 1970. It is an account which is bound to be studied with special interest in the Third World, where innumerable countries are entangled at some stage or another in the web of intrigues and pressures woven by the CIA and other U.S. agencies as a prelude to encompassing their downfall. The material in the following pages was dictated by Norodom Sihanouk in French, transcribed by myself into English, divided up according to agreed chapter titles, and corrected by Prince Sihanouk. The fact that he used a language other than his own translated into a third language means the material lacks some of the pungency and vigor when Norodom Sihanouk is translated direct from his native Cambodian, or Khmer. The main part of the work was done at the head of state's Beijing residence during the second half of December 1971 and January 1972. It was more or less completed at further working sessions in Shanghai and Beijing in March 1972, with fresh material added as the situation in Cambodia developed. One aspect of the coup in human terms was evident from the moment I set foot in Prince Sihanouk's headquarters. The first to greet me to arrange working schedules was Sihanouk's head of protocol, Prince Sisovat Metavi, brother of Sirik Matak, the co-author with Lonol of the coup, present at the residence in January 1972 to welcome two Cambodia ping-pong champions who have given the slip to Lonol's security agents in Hong Kong. While returning home from matches in South Korea was the younger sister of Cheng Heng, who replaced Sihanouk as head of state immediately after the coup. A ping-pong champion herself, she now studies medicine in Beijing. Two of her brothers are also there as engineering students. Even the chief plotters are thus seen to be in a minority within their own families. As for their status in Cambodian society as a whole, the narrative of Norodom Sihanouk is eloquent. The present work is viewed by the author as a weapon in the struggle to regain his own country's independence and as a warning to other countries marked down as future victims by W.G. Burchet in Paris, 30th of June, 1972, 2 years before Pol Pot took over. Preface. There have been numerous accounts of the events leading up to the coup d'etat in 19 March 1970, intended to depose me as head of state of the Kingdom of Cambodia. Some of the accounts have been sympathetic, some unfriendly, some objective, others tendentious. Accounts were written by persons exploiting confidences, sharing with them when they were in my employ to claim inside knowledge of what were, more often than not, insignificant or irrelevant events, and were published to establish the author's reputations as experts on the matter. The absurd scenarios which these persons have concocted served as to cover up their own perfidy. Others who came to Cambodia after the coup sincerely tried to reconstruct the scene, but viewing the events through their own optics, using their own ways and measures, they attempted to shed light on matters on which they had neither the knowledge nor the objectivity necessary to make accurate appraisals. Many of the articles and books by Western writers have one thing in common: patronizing overtones of West knows best. Asians have grown understandably sensitive to assumptions of Caucasian intellectual superiority, for we have suffered too long the humiliations of colonialism for it to be otherwise. There have been accounts written from afar with benign intent, but which suffer from lack of factual information and from ignorance of our history. Because of the worldwide interest in the drama in which my Cambodian people have been cast as unwilling actors, such accounts risk acceptance as actual history. Absent from almost all of these books and articles is the vital central issue to which all other factors are subordinate: the struggle to maintain peace and independence, the sovereignty and neutrality of our country. It is only through this optic that my leadership of Cambodia of 3 decades should be judged, not on the basis of the vagaries of internal politics upon which so many writers love to dwell. Too many could not see the Cambodian forest for its trees. Others did not want to see the forest. Despite their experiences in many lands and their academic distinctions, many observers proved less enlightened than the lowliest of our peasants. The peasants' consciousness of the difference between independence and colonialism, between peace and war, was soon heightened by American bombs. It is set to the record straight that I am, in this book, relating the salient facts of the Cambodian drama as I lived it, often as the principal actor. Alas, I am hindered by lack of documents. When I left our oasis of peace, as it was in January 1970, for medical treatment in France, I took the minimum baggage necessary for such a purpose. Historical records were obviously not included. Enough evidence is available, however, to prove the unceasing and determined intervention of the United States in the internal affairs of my country, and particularly the role of the CIA in a series of plots which culminated in the military coup of 18 March 1970. I have chosen to relate this story to one of a small group of writers who have consistently shown sympathy, comprehension, and respect for our national dignity, for the aspirations of my people, and for my own part in defending those aspirations. Norodom Sihanouk, Sase Pi Pateh Pi Kanlaing, Beijing, from Beijing, June 1970. នៅខែមិថុនានៅឆ្នាំ1970ពីសេពីសម្ដេចតានរោត្តមសីហនុនៅប៊ីជីងនៅប្រទេសចិន